Cantor is dressed like a clown. Okay, so I am Cantor Galita Dune Cohen, and my role is to be a clergy person in the synagogue, which is where we are. This is a synagogue, and the reason I'm dressed like this is because tomorrow night is the Jewish holiday of Purim. And Purim is a holiday that tells a very interesting story about a queen who was in the Persian court. Her name was Esther, and there's a special scroll that we read from. And I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but if you want to look it up, you could Google the scroll of Esther, and it'll tell you the story of this very courageous queen that we learn so much from. But the end of the Purim story, I'm going to give it away, is that it's a happy ending, and we celebrate with joy and with being silly and putting on costumes. And there are actually several meanings to why we put on costumes. One is to be joyful and silly and funny, and one is to explore identity and to realize that we all have lots of different identities, and we can play with those identities because we're not just one person. We might be one person in this environment, but we might be another person in this environment. So Purim is this kind of time for us to play with that. And I'm going to hear that. If you stay for services, you will also hear that throughout the service. So I'm going to leave it at that for Purim, and I'm going to rewind back to the beginning of what I have prepared to speak to you about, which is more general lines of what is Judaism, and what are we doing here, and where are we, and what is this, okay? So I'm going to start now from the beginning. I'm going to say, welcome to Temple B'nai Or. Temple B'nai Or is the name of our synagogue. B'nai Or means the children of light in Hebrew. Hebrew is the ancient language of the Jewish people. And all of our, hello, Lena, all of our sacred scrolls, hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. We just started. All of our sacred scrolls are written in the language of Hebrew. So you're going to hear a lot of prayers tonight in Hebrew, but I'm going to try to also do some stuff in English. And I'm actually going to pick up a prayer book right now. This is our prayer book. It's called Mishkan Tfilah, which is the translation, again, in Hebrew of like house of prayer. And Mishkan Tfilah, when you pray during the service, you'll notice that there are, this prayer book is structured in such a way where the prayers on the right side are going to be the ancient, traditional, very old prayers. And the prayers of the left side are going to be like these contemporary alternatives, poems, etc. And everything is both translated into English and also transliterated, which means it's the Hebrew words in English letters, because Hebrew is a language that is written in a different alphabet. Okay? So that's that. So we know where we are, we know who we are, and we know that this is our prayer book. So that's the introduction as far as the service that's going to begin at 7 o'clock. Now, I'm going to say a few things about the traditions of Judaism. The first thing I'm going to talk about is sacred time. So the sacred time for Jewish people is Shabbat. And Shabbat is, in Hebrew, the seventh day. According to tradition, according to the Torah, our sacred scroll, God created the world in 6 days. You can understand that in whichever way you wish to. It's very open for interpretation. God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day, God rested. The seventh day, God rested to rest and to stop and to cease and to take some time off for family and community, for being together, for dining together, for singing together. That is Shabbat, okay, the seventh day. In Hebrew, back to that sacred ancient language that we pray in Hebrew, Shabbat is literally the word for Saturday. Now, why are we here tonight, you might ask? Well, because Judaism counts time according to the lunar calendar, the moon. So when the sun sets at night, that's when our day begins. So Shabbat actually begins on Friday night. So for example, now it's 6:23, okay? So as soon as the sun sets, it's going to be the beginning of Shabbat. And we're going to do a few traditional customs that could be done at home, but we do them here as well. We light candles so that we bring in the light to our lives symbolically. We bless the wine. We take a sip of wine and we say a blessing for the wine, because wine is a symbol of plenty and bounty, everything that is good in our lives. To be thankful for all that we have. We're all very lucky. We have so much in our lives. And lastly, we break bread together, which we have challah, which if you grow up in the Jewish tradition, challah, really, who are we kidding, is the best part of Judaism because it's the yummiest bread and everybody loves to share challah. So we're going to do that at the end of the service. So these are the blessings that are here. The candles are going to be lit right at the beginning of services. And I don't, like usually we invite somebody. Hey, Pablo. Usually we invite somebody to light the candles, and tonight we'll see what happens. We might invite maybe some of the Girl Scouts to light the candles, and we're going to do the wine and the challah at the end of the service, okay? If you have questions for me, please raise your hand. You don't have to wait till the end. Okay, I'm going to say one more thing down here, and then I'm going to invite us all to go up there. And then I'm just trying to kind of prolong that because I don't want you to stand for too long because you might, be uncomfortable and get tired. So we talked about Shabbat being our sacred time. That's going to begin any minute now. We already started over here. It goes from sundown to sundown tomorrow, okay? And we usually have, services here on Friday night. We also have our central Jewish services also on Shabbat morning, which is tomorrow morning, traditionally. Nowadays, things have shifted a little bit because of the clock of the modern day, the 21st century, where people don't stop so much for Shabbat, even though they should. But so we've kind of moved our traditional service from Shabbat morning, which is tomorrow morning, to Friday night. This way we kind of mark the beginning of Shabbat together. We say lots of blessings. It's customary also to have a great big meal together. At that meal, usually parents would bless their children, again, with all the goodness and a great future. We say Shabbat Shalom to each other, which means a Sabbath of peace. Shalom in Hebrew means peace. So we wish everybody peace. And it also comes from the root shalem, which is wholeness. So you can understand peace as however you'd like to interpret it. But again, it always brings us back to family, togetherness, being calm, being whole, feeling complete, all of these sensations. I talked about, who I am. Usually we also have a rabbi here. He is the kind of other clergy person that leads the congregation. And the rabbi tonight is not going to be here because the rabbi went on the field trip with the 7th grade to another synagogue in New York City. So you just have me tonight. And thank you. And the rabbi usually gives a sermon kind of like 3/4 into the service about whatever the Torah portion is. And this is what I'm going to kind of explain a little bit more as we go up on the bima, which is what this is. The elevated space in the synagogue. Everything that's related to the Torah, the thing that's in there, is always, we are elevated physically and spiritually. So in a minute, we're going to all go up there. We're going to pull out the Torah. We're going to talk about it. Usually the rabbi gives kind of an interpretive drash, like a few words about the Torah. Tonight, because the rabbi couldn't be here with us, then I thought it would be great that we would hear some words of Torah, some words of teaching from a Girl Scout. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing this particular Girl Scout. I'm going to introduce her when she comes. She grew up in this community, and I'm very lucky that it worked out that she could be here. Okay. I talked about Hebrew. I talked about the synagogue. I talked about the bima, the rabbi, the cantor. I talked about singing together. So you will be invited to sing along with us. Some of us are actually people who lead our services together. So some of our Girl Scouts are going to go up on the bima and sing together with our leaders. So you're definitely welcome to join us anytime. Sometimes we sing things with Hebrew words, like I said earlier, our ancient language. Sometimes we're going to do a couple of things in English. Please join us. They're meant to be experienced together. And sometimes we do things with la la la. So that is the international language that we all love. So now I'm going to invite you to come up on the bima, which is the elevated space here. And we're going to pull out the Torah. The Torah is our sacred scroll, but what it means in Hebrew is, it means a teaching. So the scrolls are meant to teach us how to be in this life. So usually, before you sit down, you could sit down in a second, but before you sit down, I'm going to tell you that when we pulled the Torah out of the ark, this is our ark, okay? So before we pull out the Torah out of our ark, when we have a service here, then we invite our congregation to rise, because again, the Torah is the center of all of our communal experience, and we have a lot of honor and a lot of joy around the Torah. So when the Torah comes out of the ark, we ask the community to rise. You're going to help me undress? Thank you. And usually we dance around with the Torah. So our musician is almost here. And if he were here, you know what? I'm not going to pull out this one, but I want you all to look at the. I want you to all look at the Torah. So we have. I'm going to pull out one of these. I don't know. Maybe this one. I'm going to pull out this one. I think. I'm going to pull out this one, but we have 4 of them. Inside, the words of the Torah are absolutely identical. There's absolutely no change between them. They're always the same exact words, and they are handwritten with a special, like ancient ink, and there's a special person called a sofer that writes it, and it has to be exactly the same, and if anything changes in the Torah, it is no longer kosher, like we can't use it anymore. So we are going to, so on the outside you could see there are like different covers, and usually synagogues have like more decorative art than we do. We just have this, but it's all good. The important thing are the words of the Torah. So when we have a young person become a Jewish adult, we physically pass them the Torah, and then they become a responsible person in the community to lead us in prayer, to do the good acts that we're commanded to do, that we're taught in this Torah. So now I'm going to take this back from you, and you're going to help me take off the dress. So pull it. Thank you, Becca. Becca is very experienced in the leadership of this community. So we're all very, very thankful for, you know what? No, I'm going to leave this here. So the Torah is now out, and I invite you all to come look at the Torah. And if you get tired, then you could sit down once the Torah is out. And you know what? I'm going to close the ark. I'm going to say, just before I close the Torah, the ark, I want to say one more thing, is that we have 4 scrolls that are absolutely identical, but this scroll is very special because it's borrowed from the Westminster Synagogue in London, where they have rescued many, many Torahs from the Holocaust, and they're wounded. Some of them are a little bit ripped, like they're definitely imperfect, but they're symbolic for us. It's very important, and there's many of those scrolls around different synagogues in the world that are being preserved. It is our role to preserve this Torah to remind us, so we don't forget about the Holocaust, because that's a really important part. Okay, we're in Parshat Ha'azinu here. This is not where we are. This Torah is not rolled to where we are, which means, I'll explain, we read every Shabbat, every 7th day, when we come together in community, we read one portion from the Torah. It's in different lengths, okay? But could you do me a favor, actually, Becca? Could you get me the tikkun, which is not the prayer book? Like if you look inside that inside shelf, the fat one. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So when you read Hebrew, like these here are all, this is all the words that are in there, but with commentary, with little signs that say how to chant it, because we chant it. We don't just speak it, we chant it. The chanting helps us know how to say the Hebrew if we don't speak Hebrew. That's been invented. The chanting system is invented in the 8th century. The stories that are in here were put inside the scroll in the 2nd century BCE. So this is extremely ancient. This particular Torah was not written in the 2nd century BCE, but the stories that are in the Torah were codified and gathered into one scroll in the 2nd century BCE. And if you are not Jewish, then, and you happen to be Christian, then the Torah is the first part of the Christian Bible. It's part of the Old Testament. And then the Christians have the New Testament, but the Jewish people only practice the Old, or study from the Old Testament. So Christianity came later than Judaism and took the Jewish Bible and called it the Old Testament, and then they wrote new scripture and called them the New Testament. So this is the Torah, which is the Old Testament, and what I'm going to do, it's rolled to the very, very end. So every Shabbat, every week, we read a little tiny portion of this big scroll, and then we roll it to the next Shabbat. We roll it to the next portion, and then every year we finish reading the whole thing, and we roll it all back and we start over. Okay? So it starts. The first story in the Torah is the creation of the world in 6 days, and then God rested in Shabbat. And the last story of the Torah is how the Jewish people ventured in the desert, and that's where it ends. It ends with the death of Moses, which saddens me every year as if it just happened last week. But it didn't. It may have happened many, many years ago. Okay, now you can see that this is like sewn together. This is parchment. So it's actually animal skin, which, yes, is not very compassionate to animals. But that's how they did it in the good old days. So everything...
Just trying to get that on the video.
Hi.
Is it in there?
Yes, it is. Okay, now we never touch the Torah with our bare hands because we have like oily fingers. So what did I do with the yad? I just saw it. Here it is. So we have this thing. It's called the yad. And we kind of like point with, at the words and read and chant from the Torah. Okay? So, that's the Torah. Did I say everything there was to say about the Torah? Should I have said something else about the Torah? Do you have questions for me about the Torah? Yeah.
Can you shout the Hebrew? You know how to speak Hebrew?
I do, because I am from Israel, so I speak Hebrew. It's actually my first language, almost. But it's my, I almost said it's my mother tongue, but my parents were actually immigrants from North Africa, so actually they spoke French. It's complicated, but let's just say that Hebrew is almost the first language that I learned and spoke it as a modern language, and I studied Torah kind of like in public school in Israel, not so much as a religious text, but as like a literary text. That's way more than you asked. I'm sorry, that was complicated. Did I answer your question though? Yes. Good. Does anybody else have other questions about the Torah specifically before I put it away?
Sorry, why is it in a scroll? What's the significance of the actual
Just because it's like super old, and that's how they did it then, And a lot of Judaism is just kind of like maintaining the old. Like a lot of our traditions are just very, very ancient, and there's different sections. This is a really great question. There's really different kinds of Judaism. If there's like jokes that if you get like 2 Jews in a room, you get 3 opinions, it's very true because we don't agree about anything. And part of Judaism is actually cultivating the art of argument and study through discussion. The texts that were written after the Torah and the Hebrew Bible are called the Talmud. And if you look at a page of Talmud, it is an argument between rabbis. So you have like, if you Google Talmud, you'll find that there's going to be like an original text in the middle, and then all around it is going to be like a bunch of texts of what rabbi said. Now, Jewish law, there's a lot of Jewish laws. We're all about laws and breaking them. Jewish law was written in different centuries over time, but the Talmud included all the different opinions of those rabbis whose opinion didn't get accepted as Jewish law. It kind of maintained the argument as part of the conversation. Is everything okay? That's okay. Oy vavoy. Yes. Oh, another question.
When was the Torah made, Hannah?
Say that again.
When was the Torah made?
When?
Yeah.
When? Okay. When was it made? So that I can't.
Year.
Okay. Thank you. It's not a simple question. It's more complicated than what you think. So the stories that are in the Torah were put together from like the 4th to the 2nd century before our count right now. But this Torah was written about 50 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago. Do you see what I'm saying? So the stories are being passed down from generation to generation to generation. In Hebrew, we say that ledor vador. We pass the stories down from parents to children, from parents to children, from parents to children. And that's why I gave it to Becca, because that's how we kind of do it. When we have like a bar mitzvah here, when a Jewish child is born, they grow up studying Torah, and then when they are 12 or 13, depending on like which tradition, then they physically receive the Torah from their parents, and they have to study a passage. They have to study a little bit of Torah to do this ritual called the bar or the bat mitzvah, okay, depending if you're a boy or a girl. So when you are at a bar or bar mitzvah, you read a little piece of Torah, you speak about what you read, you show that you have studied, you have to study it, and then you become a Jewish adult. Not really, because you're 13. But in ancient times, 13 was an adult. Yes, and then you become responsible to follow Jewish law and to take part in the community and to lead the community.
And my family is part Jewish and English because my dad because my dad is Jewish and my mom is English, so Catholic. And so we celebrate this holiday called Christmas, Hanukkah, and Christmas combined together.
Into one. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Someone online was asking why you add fruit.
Well, it's just a convenient thing. Because we read Torah, especially like in the high holidays, which is the beginning of the year, we have something called Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. These are the holidays that begin the Jewish year. And so we read different sections. And again, it's really like everything that we do around the Torah is joyful and bountiful. And so we have 4 scrolls to help us. Kind of like go to different spots really quickly, but also really to revere it, to respect it, to honor it, to make it part of who we are as a people. Any other questions? Anybody else want to ask anything? Just not even about the Torah, about anything at all.
You walked in late, and I know your title is Cantor.
Yeah.
Help us understand that.
Sure. I also kind of started in a messy way, so I'm happy to repeat anything that wasn't clear. I'm going to close this, if you guys don't mind. Cantor is it's a clergy role. So if you've heard of the role rabbi actually translates to teacher. Okay, so our spiritual leaders in Judaism are teachers. And the cantor is the clergy person that teaches through music. So my training is musical. I come from being a musician. And then I teach Torah or teach Judaism through music. Most of the time. Sometimes I do what I need to do. But we also officiate, in life cycle events like funerals and baby namings and bar mitzvahs and weddings, etc. So does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Any more questions? Lena, do you have a question? No?
I have a question.
Yes.
Where'd you get the glitter?
Oh, in my office, but I got it in, I got it in New Orleans, actually, because I was there for pre-Mardi Gras, and I got it there.
Can I have some?
Maybe.
Yay.
Yes, please.
I'm not from here, but you said you speak French, but were you in Israel? That was where you're from?
I'm from Israel. I grew up in Israel, but my parents, when I was born, my parents were immigrants from Morocco and Tunisia. So they were like, they didn't speak Hebrew well, so they spoke French to each other, and I was the first child, so I spoke French first. And then I learned, like as soon as I went to school, I was that weirdo kid who doesn't speak Hebrew, and I learned Hebrew there.
No, it's great. She speaks French, but I'm curious. On her behalf, are there any like major differences in like how we do Torah here in the U.S. compared to what you may find in like Morocco?
Oh, totally. Good question. Good question. Actually, this is a huge like topic, so I could like give you 7 lectures about this. But during the times of the Romans, okay, in the year 70, the Second Temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans, and the Jews were dispersed from the land of Israel. And Jews just went everywhere. And they lived amongst other cultures, other empires, other civilizations, and adopted the vernacular language of whatever country they were living in, and adopted many things from those countries that they lived in. So like, Jewish people have different foods, different music, different language, different ways of chanting from the Torah. Like, so I studied cantorial school in New York City. So I studied the tradition of the Eastern European Jews, like Poland. So when I chant Torah, I chant according to Eastern European tradition, even though my color is not that, and my tradition is not that, and my parents are, of North African descent. And we even have some different holidays that are influenced by Islam and influenced by North African culture. Like, we dance differently, we have different music, but like, I just studied cantorial school in America, so I studied what they teach in America. So part of me is like, like when I wrote my thesis, I wrote about the history of the Sephardim, which is the Jews who were kicked out of Spain in 1492, which is what my ancestry was. But as I was studying, I realized like, oh, wow, I don't know anything about my own people, because I studied here and I studied in Israel. And Israel is a very big melting pot of different people from all over the world. So you have like different foods, different cultures, different traditions, different music. It's like such a mishmash. If you listen to Israeli music, you'll have music that's, rock music. You'll have, like folk, Russian influences. You'll have hip hop. You'll have Arab music. You'll have Latin music. Everything is like mixed up into one. Like the Israeli is the most mixed person there is nowadays, because of how things are with all the immigration waves from all these countries. Thanks for that, Christian. That's really great. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, good. So what time is it? 6:46. Perfect. So we are going to take kind of like a break. Services start at 7. So we're going to start then, go to the bathroom, go freshen up, talk amongst yourselves, and we're going to start services in a few moments.
In 13 minutes.
13 minutes. I better hurry up. Okay, let's go rehearse.
We're gonna practice